This happened a long time ago, back when I was in middle school. I don't remember the exact grade, but I was around that age. At that point in my life, I was a typical middle school-aged boy, playing soccer and leading a normal life. I texted girls, played video games, and hung out with friends. That was pretty much my routine during that time. Well, there was this one time when my mom took me to the store. Occasionally, she would bring me along because she wanted some company. You know how parents can be. So, we ended up at a strip mall with the most boring stores you can imagine. They were the kind of places only a mom would want to spend money in. Needless to say, I was incredibly bored. My mom tried to make small talk as we browsed through random wall decor, but she could tell I was really bored. She got a bit frustrated. My mom can be moody like that. Eventually, I asked her if I could go explore some of the other stores. She said yes, but made it clear that I couldn't spend any of her money. And since I didn't have any of my own, I was simply looking to kill some time. This strip mall had about 6 or 7 stores, and none of them interested me. But I was determined to occupy myself. I was already annoyed about being dragged out on a Saturday, so I figured the best thing I could do was just walk around. Back then, I actually had one of those step counters, which I thought was the coolest thing ever. My goal was to rack up as many steps as I possibly could. There was a Target nearby, and it was larger than the other stores, so I figured there would be more space to walk around. And with that, I was off. I entered Target without even pretending to browse. I walked up and down the aisles like a maniac. Looking back, it must have been quite a sight. When you see someone in a store clearly just trying to increase their step count, it becomes pretty obvious that they're not there to shop. I must have been doing this for about 10 or 15 minutes when an older guy approached me. He started walking beside me and introduced himself as Larry. Larry said he wanted to walk with me. Being a naive kid, I didn't think anything of it and said that I would love the company. That's when I started complaining about my mom. Larry began asking a series of questions that, in hindsight, should have raised some alarm bells in my head. He asked where exactly she was, how long she would be gone, and things like that. I told him that I'd probably have to wait for her for another hour or two before she was done shopping. That's when he offered to take me back to his place. He said he had an Xbox, and he lived just 2 minutes away. When he asked me that, I stopped walking. Part of me almost said yes, but then I remembered my parents telling me about all the creepy old men who try to kidnap kids. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks, and I told him that I wanted to go back and find my mom. He started getting really persistent, suggesting we get ice cream and then go to his place. I told him I didn't want any ice cream and that my mom was looking for me. That's when he offered me $100 to go with him. I firmly declined and just ran away. He followed me outside and watched as I sprinted back into the store where I had last seen my mom. The look on his face was incredibly creepy. That guy was a real freak. Inside the store, I rushed over to my mom and started telling her about the creepy man. She got really concerned and asked me where he was. I informed her that he was probably in the parking lot. We looked out the glass windows, and sure enough, he was staring in our direction. When he realized we were looking at him, he walked away. My mom went outside to try to get a good look at him or get his license plate, but he was gone. We ended up calling the police and filing a report. Unfortunately, I couldn't provide them with much information. I wasn't and still am not a very observant person. The only details I could recall about him were that he wore a collared shirt, was bald, and claimed his name was Larry. That was it. Years later, I asked my mom about the case. She mentioned that she had kept up with it to see if they ever caught him. Of course, they didn't. It really scares me to think that someone who was possibly willing to abduct a child is still out there. It freaks me out and makes me hesitant to go out in public often. But anyway, that's the story of how I was almost abducted in Target when I was in middle school. I thank God every day that I didn't go with him because I might not be alive today. This is, hands down, the scariest experience of my life. I was out driving with two of my best friends on one of those wonderful summer nights when we just wanted to have some fun. We had just finished watching a movie and decided to take a drive around our rural area. Sometimes it's nice to explore and see what's around. It was pretty dark, but we were having a good time nonetheless. It must have been around 9 o'clock at night. We had the music blasting and were laughing and enjoying ourselves. However, there was a car that started following us. They weren't tailgating us or anything, but they trailed behind us for an unusually long time. One of my friends pointed it out, and I hadn't even noticed. I asked her how long it had been following us, and she said at least 10 minutes. I wasn't sure what to do. We were quite far out in the middle of nowhere. I remembered learning a trick a couple of years ago. If you think someone is following you, you can take 4 turns in the same direction, and if they're still behind you, it's a clear sign they are following you. There weren't many turns out there, but every single turn I took, that car followed. By the time I made the 3rd turn, I started feeling really uneasy. I thought we might be in real danger, and the mood shifted. We turned off the music, and instead of laughter, we sat there in dead silence. We all started freaking out a bit when I made that 4th turn, and the car was still behind us. Like I said, it wasn't tailgating or anything. It wasn't even very close, but it was close enough to keep an eye on us. I tried convincing my friends to call the police, but we were out of range of any cell phone service. I was completely lost as to what to do. I was scared out of my mind. That's when my friend came up with the best idea. We could go to the nearest store or something, and hopefully, the people there would help us if this person kept following us. The problem was, none of us knew where any stores were nearby. The closest one we could think of was a Target store near town, but that had to be at least 30 minutes away. We couldn't come up with any other plan, so driving to Target became the plan. There's no way I could ever describe to you the situation accurately. It was the most horrifying experience of my life, not only because I thought I was going to die, but also because I had no idea what to do, and it went on for so long. 30 minutes feels like a lifetime when you believe a potential murderer is right behind you. I sincerely hope you never have to experience something like that. With each passing moment, the tension and anxiety grew. Although it felt like an eternity, we finally arrived at Target. It was pretty crowded, which we were grateful for. This was our plan. I would park my car right in front of Target, and we would all run out and seek refuge in the store. We hoped that someone would assist us by that point, or, better yet, the person following us would leave to avoid causing a scene in public. I don't know why we didn't think to call the police. By that point, we definitely had cell phone service, but the whole situation prevented us from thinking clearly. I parked my car right in front of Target, and we all ran into the store as planned. When we came across the first employee, we asked for the manager and told him that we were being chased. The manager believed us and escorted us to the employee section of the store. He called the police for us and provided assistance. Thankfully, the person from the car didn't enter the store, or at least, we don't think they did. We weren't really paying attention to the car once we pulled into the parking lot. When the police arrived, it was quite late. It took them almost 20 minutes, which felt a bit slow to me. And when they finally showed up, they treated us as if we were crazy. One of the officers thought we were making up the entire situation for attention. That really angered one of my friends, and I had to stop her from confronting the officer. The manager, on the other hand, was understanding and supportive. He allowed us to get drinks from the vending machine and even offered us a ride home. I thanked him and informed him that I would be driving my friends back home. I still don't know who was in that car or why they were following us. All I know is that I never want to be in a situation like that again, and I hope you never have to experience the terror it entails. I was a manager at Target and had a horrible experience with a customer one time. I always found the situation very strange. For the most part, the customers are very pleasant and not at all bad in comparison to some other places. I have worked with the public my entire adult life, and people can be absolutely horrible sometimes. But they were a little bit better at Target. In the few years that I've worked there, I never once had to call security or physically escort someone off the premises. I only once ever had to call the police on someone, and I would actually make the case that he was only at Target to creep on girls. So I'm not even sure that really counts. But anyway, I digress. My story with that guy was actually really interesting. And I feel a weird combination of anger and sympathy for this one kid. He must have been about 19 or 20 years old, really tall. One of the weirdest looking kids I've ever seen. And I don't mean that in a judgmental way or anything, he was just really strange looking. It probably made life for him really difficult. So, I can at least understand where he was coming from when he did what he did. Absolutely does not justify it or anything, but I can understand him at least if that makes sense. It all started on a usual afternoon. I had just gotten off the phone with corporate. And if you're wondering, yes, it's always a nightmare. I was looking forward to doing some inventory checks and whatnot for the day. The store had been awfully busy that week. I had a customer who wanted to speak with me. I went out to talk with her, and she told me about an employee who had been inappropriate with her. I guess one of our people was helping her decide on clothes and was standing a little too close to the dressing room door. Honestly, she struck me as a drama queen. I just kind of brushed it off and told her that we would look into it and make sure our employees don't do anything like that again. But when you're a manager, you hear complaints like that all the time. And a good chunk of them are just from people who want to get a free item or discount or something. I got another complaint that day from another customer. This one made me a little more intrigued. It was from someone who looked like she came from a wealthy home. Probably not looking for a handout here. She said that one of our employees had felt her while she was looking at clothes. Now that set off some alarm bells because that meant that one of my workers was physically creeping on customers on the job. I told her I would look into it and called the meeting before everyone went home. I explained the situation and said that whoever was responsible could come to my office and have a chat with me. I would go easy with them if they admitted to it without forcing me to look into it. My personal philosophy is that people know when they do wrong, and they just want an opportunity to right their wrongs. So I try to give it to them. But everyone went home. No one admitted anything. And that was when it was on. We couldn't look at the security camera footage in the area because all of this had been going down near the dressing rooms. The closest security camera we have is on the outside rack of the clothes, but it doesn't give us very much indication of what's going on near the dressing rooms. I asked one of my favorite employees to keep an eye on that area over there. He told me he would. 2 days went by and he didn't see anything. I didn't get any more complaints either. Very strange. Of course, it wasn't long before we had another complaint. I asked the woman what this employee looked like. She forgot the name on the name tag, but told me that it was a tall, skinny guy with weird-looking glasses. And right off the bat, I knew it wasn't anyone on my team. We didn't have a skinny guy with glasses. And immediately, I knew that we were dealing with someone who was pretending to be an employee. I gave a heads up to my team and had everyone on the lookout. I remember getting a text message from one of my female team members. She told me that she spotted someone like that over by the clothing section. I immediately went over there to look around. But before I did, I made sure to put on my jacket around my uniform. That way, it wouldn't be obvious that I was the manager looking to bust this guy. I spotted him. This kid stuck out like a sore thumb. At first, I was worried I would be dealing with some middle-aged creep. I felt kind of bad when I realized that this was some high school or college kid being a weirdo. He was wearing what looked like a Target uniform. If you look closely enough, you could tell it was a fake. But I guess the average customer doesn't really know the difference. I walked over to him and asked to see him in my office. The look of terror on his face that washed over him in that moment was unforgettable. He wasn't trying to run or anything, and I brought him in and sat him down. From what I could tell, he was an otherwise good kid. He was going to the local community college, had good grades, went to church, the whole 9 yards. I asked him why he was doing this, and he said it was because no girls in his college would date him. I tried explaining to him that being a creep to strangers by impersonating a Target employee is not the answer. I told him that I could call the police and have him arrested for what he was doing. I told him I wouldn't though. I know having something like that on your record can really mess your life up. And I wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt. After all, he hadn't done anything horribly bad in the store. He seemed like he got the memo. Well, he didn't though. It must have been 2 or 3 months later that I got another report about something like that. Apparently, this woman was looking for a new sweater, and a Target employee kissed her on the cheek. My mind jumped to the only thing I could think of, and I called the police. I was willing to give him the benefit of the doubt, but he had dug his own hole here. He was in the same area doing the same thing as before. I don't know what happened to him after the fact. But what I can tell you is that one of the cops recognized him. I guess this wasn't the only time he was being a creep in clothing stores pretending to be an employee. But other than that one weird kid, the people at Target are very okay people.